About a year ago, I sold my $700 Garmin Edge 1040 Solar and bought a $250 Coros Dura, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made for my ultra bikepacking and racing setup. I know it sounds crazy because most people assume spending less means getting less. The Garmin is supposed to be the premium option. More features, more integration, more data, more of everything. So why would I replace it with something way cheaper? Well, after using the Coros Dura for the last year, I have the answer.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my.
Hey guys, Dylan here with the Endurance Studio, where I share unbiased reviews, tips, tricks, and real-world insights on ultra-endurance stuff. Today I'm breaking down why I sold my Garmin and why the Coros Dura has completely won me over. So let's get into it. Before I talk about the Coros, let's talk about why I left Garmin. I bought the Garmin Edge 1040 Solar in January of 2024 and used it for about 17 months across training rides, ultra distance events, and bikepacking races. And over time, I developed three major frustrations. The first is the battery life. It wasn't terrible, but it was way less impressive than expected, especially for multi-day rides. And the newer Garmin 1050 improved screen brightness, resolution, and speed, but they dropped the solar charging and took an even bigger hit to the battery life with reports of roughly half the amount of runtime. My second frustration with the Garmin were glitches and feature overload. Garmin keeps adding stuff like fork sight and group track and all these features that personally I never used. Maybe some people love them, I just didn't. And my third biggest gripe is the interface. The menu system just felt too complicated. There were too many layers, too many settings, and too much friction to get to what I needed. And when you're 20 hours into a ride, exhausted and mentally cooked, the last thing you want is to dig through menus. When the Coros Dura first launched, the reviews were rough. And honestly, I think those criticisms were fair. Coros clearly rushed the release and had software issues and launch problems, including incomplete firmware and third-party mount compatibility issues. I wasn't fully convinced after reading all the reviews online at that time, so that's why I waited. I bought mine about a year after the launch, and now, after using it extensively for the last year, I haven't experienced any of those issues. Reliability. This is the biggest thing. My Coros Dura has never unintentionally rebooted on me. That was a fairly common occurrence on the Garmin. The Dura has never frozen and it's never glitched on a route. I know it sounds basic, but for ultra distance riding, reliability is basically everything. When I hit start, I trust it, and that's what matters. The battery life is honestly ridiculously good. I can literally leave this thing on overnight for multiple nights in a row. That's huge for bikepacking races and multi-day rides. And here's the craziest part. I've done multiple bikepacking trips and races with the Dura, and I still haven't had to charge it mid-ride. Not once. A lot of bikepacking racers carry a battery bank, partially as a backup, just to keep their navigation device alive and charged up. But with the Coros, that's basically a moot point. This means one less thing that can go wrong. With the Garmin, battery was always somewhere floating around in the back of my mind. But with the Coros Dura, I stopped thinking about battery entirely. And that's incredibly freeing. The Dura has everything I actually need. Almost. I think people misunderstand the Dura. Because it's simpler, people assume it's missing important features. Not really. It does everything I personally need. Navigation, route tracking, off-course warnings, power meter support, heart rate support, wireless shifter controls. For my particular use case, that's everything. I think simplicity is one of the Dura's greatest strengths. The digital crown dial is fantastic, especially with thick gloves during cold riding. And the interface and menu just makes sense. For ultra endurance riding, I don't want complexity. I want to load a route, hit start, and ride, and that's it. And the Coros absolutely nails that. Okay, it's not perfect. The single biggest weakness is rerouting. Coros still doesn't have true on-device rerouting like the Garmin. If you go off route and need a reroute, it relies heavily on your smartphone app and having a decent signal. For riders in remote areas, this could become a problem. Now, personally, I've never used the rerouting, so this hasn't been a major issue for me. But if mid-ride rerouting is a priority, Garmin still wins there. The screen is also a bit smaller than on the Garmin 1040. For me, this hasn't been a deal breaker, but if you really do value maximum map visibility or larger data fields, it's definitely worth noting. I also wish I could zoom out a little bit further on the maps sometimes on the Dura, but sometimes actually that's a blessing in disguise, so I don't have to see how ridiculously far I still have to go for the rest of my ride, and I get sad and discouraged. And finally, the third-party app ecosystem is still pretty shallow. compared to the Garmin. For example, there's no native TrainerRoad integration, so I can't seamlessly send workouts from TrainerRoad to the device. Also, the training analytics are much lighter than Garmin. So if you love deep performance metrics, integration, and advanced data, Garmin's definitely still has the edge. So who should buy the Coros Dura? If you want every feature imaginable, endless metrics, and advanced training analytics, buy the Garmin and be prepared to pay about double. But if you want massive battery life, rock solid reliability, simple navigation, minimal fuss, the Coros Dura is excellent. For me, it's the better bike computer. Not because it does more, because it does less better. And in ultra racing, every extra thing is another thing that can fail. When you're 2-3 days into a ride, tired and sleep deprived, that matters. The Coros Dura is definitely staying on my bike. And before we go, huge thanks to new YouTube channel members, FJ40 Runner, Richard Hartme, and Danimal in the SCM. I truly appreciate the support. And if you're finding this channel entertaining and helpful, please subscribe, consider becoming a member, drop a super thanks, or send me a one-time PayPal donation. It genuinely helps support the podcast and videos like this. All right, that's it for today. If you've used the Coros Dura, let me know in the comments. Did you switch from Garmin, or are you sticking with the Garmin ecosystem? Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you after my next adventure.